Today is International Nurses Day, so happy International Nurses Day. Thank you so much for everything. So today is the anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale. So in 1854, Florence Nightingale brought over 38 volunteer nurses to care for soldiers during the Crimean War. And prior to Florence Nightingale, there wasn't really an organized nursing profession. Like male and female nurses were mostly untrained family members or soldiers who cared for those that were sick. So Florence Nightingale really just made it more of a modern profession. She also helped provide standardized roles and responsibilities for nurses. And she also upped the sanitation and hygiene in hospitals, so prevented decreased infection rates. And over time, nurses have had such an important impact in the world, like in the American Civil War. In the 1860s, there's thousands of trained nurses that were helping in the battlefronts. Nurses also helped with the yellow fever epidemic in 1878. There was also the 1918 influenza pandemic where 50 million people died worldwide, and many people, many nurses also got sick. There was influenza pandemic in the 50s, Ebola virus, Zika, and now with the coronavirus, there's just so many crises that nurses have helped with. So I just want to have some time and just applaud nurses. Thank you, nurses, for all you do. Thank you, thank you. And I see Maria stepped into the room. Hello, Maria, welcome. If you can hear me. So today I want to introduce Tasha. So this is Tasha Triana. She's a registered nurse at Kaiser over in San Francisco. And she created the Nurture Nurse platform to inspire others to engage in their own self-care and wellness. And she's had experiences through a nurse where she realized she had to prioritize her own self-care in order to take care of others. Today, she'll be talking to us about the importance of self-care and routines. We all know that it's so important to take care of yourself, but often as nurses, we do so much for others and kind of put ourselves on a back burner. So I just want to welcome Tasha today to talk about that.
Thanks, Claudia. Thank you so much. And thank you and Janelle for organizing this, first of all, for having me here today. I love talking about self-care, and I think it's just so important for everybody, but especially for nurses, and especially during these current times with COVID and all of us, you know, really on the front lines. So grateful for you guys for setting this up, grateful for all of the nurses out there, and, you know, just sending extra love, compassion, and gratitude to everyone out there. Yeah, so for those of you who are tuning in or listening or viewing the replay later, what would be nice is I love doing this talk as more of an interactive talk, but today it looks like we might kind of change the format up a little bit and just based on our audience. So you can tune in. Having a journal and a pen or a piece of paper and a pen would be helpful just for some little journal prompts throughout the talk and just to kind of get you thinking about your own self-care practices and how to create routines for self-care in your daily life. So first, I'd love to start off with just a little mini meditation, and then I'll go into kind of a little bit of my background, my story, and how I was so inspired to just like dive into self-care, and also what is self-care and how you can build your own self-care routine, which is so, so important, as I mentioned, for everybody, but especially for nurses as we're out caretaking for others. And, you know, we want to make sure our own battery is charged up before we are giving and giving so that we can give in an even stronger and more impactful way. Okay, so wherever you are, if you could just get in a comfortable seat and just kind of get your body in a comfortable spot, put your feet on the ground, maybe roll your shoulders out a couple times and just sink into your surroundings. And then go ahead and close your eyes and start taking some nice, slow, deep breaths through the mouth. Nice and slow for about 5-second inhale, and then slowly exhale through the mouth as well for about a count of 5. And keep that rhythm going. Slow inhales through the mouth and nice slow exhales. And just notice your energy start to shift as you continue with the breath. On the inhale, imagine filling up your lungs all the way, and slowly exhale and release everything. Keep going with the breath. Slow inhale and a nice slow exhale. Keep going. Inhale for a count of 5 and exhale for a count of 5. Continue with the breath. And as you're here, do a scan of your body. Notice if there's any areas where you might be holding any tension, any stress, and really send your oxygen there. Keep going with your slow, deep breaths. On the next inhale, raise your shoulders all the way up to your ears and hold them up, 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 and let it all go on the exhale. And go ahead and repeat that. Inhale, shoulders up, 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 all the way to your ears, and release and let the shoulders go. One more. Inhale, shoulders up. Exhale, shoulders down. Keep going with the breath. Nice and slow. And as you're here, connecting to your breath, also connect to your own inner voice. What is it you need more of today? Maybe it's rest, maybe it's downtime, silence, a walk. Whatever it is, trust whatever came in first and really honor yourself with that today. We always have the answers inside, yet often we're so busy going from one activity to the next that we don't take the time to stop and listen. Or maybe we do hear the voice and we just ignore it and continue on our day. Keep going with the breath. Few more rounds. Nice and slow. Really inhale all that oxygen and let it all go. Again. And slowly start making your way back into your space. Maybe roll your neck a few times or move your head from side to side. Shake your head yes or no. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the space. All right. And then just kind of do a little scan as well of your body and your energy, and just notice how you felt before and how you felt after, and how quickly you can shift, with just a couple minutes of silence, a couple minutes of breathing, a couple moments of downtime, how quickly that can shift your energy and your feeling. And just really be aware of that. It doesn't take much to shift you into another state. I also want to read a card from a love deck that one of my friends gave me. And the card I chose for this class today is kindness. And it says, you are a humanitarian made of love, and you're able to share that energy with others. And to elaborate a little more on what it says, a kind soul that is part of our human lexicon for a reason. Your gentle heart is a reservoir of kindness, and you give generously to others through encouraging words, smiles, natural concern, and support. By living in the space of kindness, you treat everyone with the utmost respect and tend to put their needs before your own. People love being in your presence because it feels good to be encouraged and accepted. Kindness is demonstrating genuine compassion. It can never be false or forced because it comes from caring, nurturing center of your being. Kindness expects nothing in return, for it is its own reward. Understand that when you share this energy, it will have a ripple effect on every person you come into contact with. Remember also the need to be kind to yourself. Realize that you are always a work in progress. And just think about the word kindness and maybe how you can offer yourself more kindness. As nurses, I think we're really good at offering that energy out. And how can we offer that to ourselves first? Because actually, by giving to ourselves first, we show up stronger, more compassionate, more kind, more loving for those that are around us and that we're taking care of. Yeah, so I leave you with kindness for the intention for today's little talk. And then again, just thank you, Claudia, for introducing me. My name is Tasha Triana. I'm a registered nurse among, I would say, many other things. But now my passion is really self-care, wellness, mindfulness, mindset, um, and a little bit about me. So I've been a nurse for, I just hit 7 years, which is crazy how fast time flies. But before I became a nurse, I actually got my master's in psychology and was really interested in child development and developmental psychology. I loved working with children. And then after I got my master's, I decided to switch to the medical field. I really wanted to do Doctors Without Borders and work with children internationally. And so I was on this path of becoming a nurse. And I somehow knew that I would work in a hospital, but it wouldn't be my full career, and that I would kind of use that as a bridge to whichever area that I would then branch off to, but I didn't know at the time what it would be. So I, went to nursing school, plugged away at that, went into the hospital setting where I started in postpartum, where I had an internship from nursing school and was then hired to go into the field from there, which I really loved. I love working with babies, families, and just I feel so blessed to have that experience and to be with patients and new moms or, second, third, fourth time moms. Just really love that place in their life, and I feel so blessed and fortunate to be there during that time. And as I received all of my hospital experience that allowed me to then apply for Doctors Without Borders, I applied. And at the time they had received my application, accepted, all of my experience and everything. But at the time they were needing French speakers. And for me, it's Spanish or English. And I didn't speak French. So I just took it kind of as this isn't the timing right now. Maybe it'll come back, but keep doing what I'm doing. And I continued traveling and seeing the world. And at that same time I had applied, I was realizing that I was starting to feel burnt out, and I hadn't been a nurse for very long, just about 3 years. And I think nurses kind of have, especially with 12-hour shifts, in my experience, a work hard, play hard mentality. So you have your 3 12-hour shifts that you do in a week. And then on your days off, you kind of do everything else. You go to your appointments, you do your groceries, your errands around the house, you see your friends, your family. And for me, I would realize, wow, my days off are feeling just as full and almost as tiring as my days at the hospital. And I thought, wow, how can I sustain myself or my life in this way? I really love my career. I love everything I'm doing, but I'm realizing I'm feeling pretty burnt out. I also, in my family, I think this is probably common to other nurses too, but am kind of the caretaker role as well. So I would love to do that stuff, take my grandma to the doctor or just check in on people. And then that's when I realized that something kind of needed to shift, because I was feeling depleted and burnt out, and realizing too that at work I had, just less patience than I normally would, less compassion. I just felt kind of more fatigued overall. So I started to take a step back, and that put me really in the path of meditation and yoga and just kind of slowing down, really absorbing nature, being outside. And then that led me to become certified as a meditation teacher, which I never would have anticipated, also a yoga teacher, and now being able to incorporate the mindfulness piece and the other end of wellness. It's been really cool just to have the psychology, the nursing background, and now the extra wellness piece. And so I've found, self-care in my own life has been such a game changer, and actively incorporating that in my day-to-day life has been so important. And it helps me show up not just stronger as a nurse, but as a human in life. And so I think when I'm taking care of myself, I know I can show up in my best possible way, rested, well nourished, and just balanced mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And that creates a ripple effect out to everyone I come in contact with. So I feel really passionate about self-care. I'm really excited to share a few things today. And yeah, like I mentioned before, normally I like to do interactive talks with self-care because I feel it helps you kind of integrate and apply things to your own life. But today we will kind of just go with some of the things we had planned, and you can do this from home with the journal prompts, and I'll kind of prompt you along. So in terms of self-care, I know it is something that now gets more attention than it used to in the past. I think that self-care, people would kind of say, like, what is self-care, and is self-care selfish? What is it exactly? And so self-care is basically any activity that you do deliberately to take care of your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. And it's something that you prioritize, you set aside time to do, and it's actually essential. It's not selfish at all. It's something that's very necessary and should be really prioritized. I think currently the hospital culture doesn't necessarily prioritize it yet, though with everything going on currently and the times with COVID, I think that it's shining a really nice light on the importance of nurses and frontline workers, healthcare workers overall. And, without frontline workers, and if they're burning out, who will we have to take care of our patients? And so just seeing how important it really is for nurses, doctors, everyone really in the medical field to put that energy first into themselves. Something that's really important about self-care is that it can look different from person to person. What refills one person might not refill someone else or recharge them or replenish them. And so it's really important to understand kind of, first of all, what are things that bring you joy? What are things that replenish you? What are things that fill you up? And so we'll go through a couple of journal prompts to help you pinpoint some things that will be successful for you in recharging you. Self-care is also meant to soothe and strengthen just you as a person, you as a being as well. Let's see, one example that I really love in terms of self-care is viewing self-care as a battery. And so I think that sometimes self-care, we have this vision of like getting a massage, getting a manicure, pedicure, and like, okay, I'm burnt out. Let me just do all these things in one day, and then I'll feel good. I'll feel replenished. And for me, I really like the analogy of self-care like your phone battery. Most of us, for myself, I know whenever my phone gets to like 70% or sometimes even higher, I'm like, oh, I got to charge my phone. It's like I never let my phone get to even 40%. So I never let it get low. I'm always constantly recharging my phone. And that's the way that self-care should be viewed too. It should be viewed as a battery that you want to keep charged up. You never want to let yourself get fully depleted. You want to remain, in the high percentage of your self-care battery. So doing things on a daily basis, it doesn't have to be getting a massage every single day. Unless you can do that and it works for you, go for it. But it should be little activities that you're doing on a regular basis to keep your battery charged. So I really like that example. I think another example too, in terms of self-care and just understanding its need, its necessity, and why it should be prioritized is maybe some of you have heard the example of putting your mask on the airplane. So whenever they give this announcement on the airplane regarding the oxygen mask, they always say to put it on yourself first and then you'll be able to better help everyone else that's around you. So first take care of you, and then you can everyone else, because if you're on the ground, you're not able to help other people. Oh, it looks like we have some other people joining. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I don't know, Claudia, do you have anything like in terms of self-care that you would like to add in, or?
Oh, there we go. I was unmuting myself. Oh,
Yeah.
what you said, I really like your recharging your phone battery analogy, because yeah, as nurses, sometimes you just work yourself so much. I started off in cardiac telemetry nursing, and I would run around all day, 12 hours a day, and barely go pee, I remember,
Mhm.
and just barely skip a lot of meals and things like that. So I just like really worked myself hard. And then, yeah, I realized I just couldn't keep going like that, especially multiple shifts in a row. So I needed to do something for my self-care. But yeah, self-care is so important. And yeah, nurses are, I don't know if guilty is the right word, but it's guilty of doing so much for other people, and they often neglect their own need. I mean, it's kind of in their nature. They always want to give, and they feel good giving too. And
Mhm.
seeing people benefit from like better health or more attention and things like that. But yeah, it's very, very important for nurses to take care of themselves. And that's also why we created this series for nurses to take a step back and learn wellness practices and talk about self-care and really fill their own cup first,
Mhm.
so they can help others. So really pleased to have you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing that example. I think that with self-care, I mean, it can be applied to any area of our life, whether you're at work or home, and just kind of a work-life balance as well. I mean, even for me as a nurse, I remember the same thing, like not ever having time to go to the bathroom, or, and you, when you think about it, you're like, that's so crazy in a way. Like, how could we not take like 2 minutes to just go to the bathroom? But I think the culture is also shifting away kind of from one of, I would say, martyrdom, where it's kind of like that's almost like expected to. It's like so self-sacrificing, but really in the end, that ends up hurting everyone, especially the caretaker, especially the nurse, who's then just left totally depleted mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I think that, nursing presents kind of all of those possible ways of being depleted. It's emotionally can be very taxing, especially depending on what floor you work on, what unit you work on, what department you work on. Physically, you're on your feet for so long, and if you aren't going to the bathroom, if you aren't eating well, these are all things that kind of, not kind of, they very much do deplete your battery. So it's really important. And I think for me, first learning the self-care tools at home and away from work have then allowed me to really up my game in that way and learn strategies as well, at work too. So sometimes for me, if I notice I'm getting overwhelmed or just feeling really tired, depleted, stressed, kind of out of balance at work, I'll take a few minutes and just go into a bathroom stall that I know is just like a single bathroom, where I can take a few minutes to take a few deep breaths and just kind of check in with myself, or go drink some water, eat a snack, something that will just recharge me in that moment. And just, yeah, being very, very much aware to, checking in with myself at work if I'm able to. Now these times are a little bit different with COVID, but if I'm able to leave the floor physically, even the nurses lounge, and just go outside, even if it's only for a couple minutes, but just to get fresh air, sunlight if it's day shift, and just really be mindful of my own, yeah, just my own being and what I need for myself. Because I know that, as I become depleted, it's also our fuses kind of become shorter, and what we're able to tolerate and hold becomes less and less. So I think that the awareness piece is really important too, especially while we're at work. I think that another topic I have a couple of journal prompts that I'll go ahead and just put out for people that I think can start building awareness and building kind of like the initial steps of creating your own self-care plan. So the first question I would ask and have you journal on is, what are things and activities that replenish me? And taking some time to just really think about whatever activity that is. Again, this can look different from me to you, to your best friend, to your mom, to your sister. It's just really being honest with yourself. What are the things that replenish you? And then another question I would ask are, what are the things that bring me joy? So what are these things? It could be, going on a walk by the beach, going outside, reading a book, having quiet time, meditating, yoga, eating a healthy meal, having tea, putting your legs up the wall, doing a stretch, writing, anything, listening to music, moving your body, dancing, anything that replenishes you, recharges you, brings you joy. All of these things are adding to your self-care battery. So I would spend some time journaling on those and really looking at your list to see kind of what comes up. And you might even be surprised by some of the things on your list. And then the next step I would have you do is circle the things that you're doing daily or on a regular basis. Often, as we're new in the self-care journey and self-care practices and routines, we'll notice there's kind of like a discrepancy. We might have listed, 30 things and we only circle 3 of those or 5, or maybe even none if we're really depleting ourselves. So the first step in creating any new change or any new routine or new pattern is creating awareness. So first, understanding what are the things that would recharge your self-care battery, and what are you currently doing? And that's okay if it's none. This is the first step, and it's very common in the beginning. I know I used to be very depleted and I would do a few things here and there, but now, as I've had years of practice in this area, self-care is something I do every day. And I start my morning as well with self-care so that I'm already beginning the day full. Another piece that's important as you're building your routines is really scheduling them into your schedule. And so, some of you might be really great at working out or, eating healthy, whatever it is. And it's something that you do normally day to day. And as you're building a self-care practice, you really want to prioritize that, and creating a new habit. Generally, there's kind of mixed research, but usually it's about 30 days it takes to create a new habit, a new pattern. So even if that pattern is, doing a self-care activity for 5 minutes a day, the most important piece is having consistency. So it could be, taking 10 minutes to drink your tea. It could be reading for 10 minutes every day. It's okay to start small. The most important piece is to schedule it in and stay consistent and keep that promise to yourself, and really prioritize yourself in that time, and having it in kind of as a non-negotiable. Something that I do now in my own self-care routine that most of my friends and family know about is every Friday I have my morning where I just keep that time free for myself only. I won't schedule anything else. It's just my Tosh time. And so I have that in the schedule every Friday, and every Friday it could be something different, but I know I have that time for myself, and it is not, phone call time. It's not catch up on errands time. It's usually going on a hike or doing yoga, doing some meditation, or all of those things. And it also helps for me knowing I have that time scheduled, and my family knows too. So it's nice. They're like, oh, okay, Tosh time, do your thing. And that's in addition to doing things on a daily basis as well. So I also kind of think of self-care. I really like running. I used to run a lot more and have trained for a few marathons. And I equate self-care too to kind of training for a race or exercise. So when you're training for a marathon, you do runs almost every day, but you still have your rest days, and there's short runs and there's long runs. So you have your short runs to keep your consistency, to keep your overall, health and fitness in check. And then you have your long runs usually on the weekend, where you kind of boost your endurance. You can increase the length that you go. And so I think with self-care, it's so important to have the daily piece, the consistent piece, but then maybe you also have a long day where you say, hey, this whole day is just for me, or this whole weekend I'm going to go on a mini trip and it's just for me to recharge my battery. And yeah, really just shifting the mindset as well from it's something that might be considered selfish to something that's actually necessary and should be very prioritized. Yeah, so these are just some tips and tools that I have, making sure you schedule something in, being aware of the things that replenish you and that recharge you. First, creating that list is really important, and maybe even putting the list somewhere visible on your refrigerator or on the mirror in your bathroom, somewhere that you're also going to be reminded of these things as well. Looks like we're getting a few new people. Welcome. Yeah, Claudia, is there anything else that you would like to add? Or I don't know if we want people to be able to chime in for questions or.
Yeah, we could do both of those. So I actually really like what you said about scheduling time just for yourself, like penciling it in, because oftentimes we just schedule activities and like specific activities or calls and things like that. So that's really important to do that, as well as a regular routine. So I like to think of self-care as something essential, like brushing your teeth. Like maybe if meditation really works for you, just make sure, be compassionate with yourself if you're not able to do it a certain day, but try to think of it as essential, like brushing your teeth. Like it's just part of your regular self-care routine, like that. And then I think the mind just kind of shifts a little bit how it's essential. And I liked how you, it is really important to think of it as not being a selfish thing, but an essential thing, because people do, I mean, you can only do so much without taking care of yourself before you burnt out. You burn out too, and your fuse gets short, and then you're not doing anyone good if you're tired or irritable, kind of thing. So it is really essential for people to take care of themselves in that regard. And I think we can open it up to who's in the room too, if they want to share any of the questions that maybe some of the questions that you had. We can open it up to them.
Sure, yeah, I would love if anyone would love to share, or if anyone has any questions about creating their own self-care practice, or yeah, I would be open to any of that.
So Rebecca, Sharon, Eugenia, not sure if you can hear us or if you're in the room.
Hi, Tasha. It's Rebecca.
Hey, Rebecca. Oh, hey, Rebecca. How's it going?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, speaking of postpartum, I had a really, really busy shift on Sunday, and just kind of cascading, and not sick patients, but just 4 couplets in postpartum, which, as you know, is too much, and breastfeeding needs. And I know this is about self-care, so I mean, maybe it's kind of a 2-part question, comment, which I've given you advice on this before, but now I have to learn how to take my own advice about just coping strategies for how to get through a shift like that when your nurturing instinct is telling you, I want to help all these moms breastfeed, but you can't. And then how to process all that when you get home, particularly from an evening shift, wind down, sort of process it, leave it behind, and be able to get a good night's sleep, and then wake up the next morning and not sort of have this hangover from a really busy shift where there were just too many demands on your time.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I totally hear you, and I definitely have had shifts like that before too. And I think that, yes, reflecting on it is very helpful, but also having compassion with yourself too, as you just know that we're one person on a shift, and sometimes the demands not even a robot could do. And so I think like knowing you did the best you could and prioritizing the most important things while you were there. Just before I kind of go into more things, and thank you for sharing, what would be your initial like go-to advice that you were thinking you would give to someone in those shoes?
Well, really just to have that talk with yourself and say, I'm only one person. I can't do everything. Understand that if I don't do everything that I need to do or that I feel that I need to do on this shift, life will go on. The moms and babies are going to survive, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And to ask for help, that's a tough one for me, from the break nurse or for another nurse who might not have such a tough assignment. I can see her there looking at her phone. To do it in a nice way and keep my tone of voice pleasant and not let my tension show, because I tend to do that. You've probably never seen that side of me, but when I get stressed, it comes out. So, that's what I'm looking for, is ways to navigate through a shift like that. I know that's not directly tied to your self-care topic, but
I think it is. I think it's definitely tied to it, because when we feel overwhelmed too, that kind of can spin us in another direction. And I think that, yeah, thank you for sharing. My suggestion would have been the same too, is really taking the delegating piece into account. And I think as nurses as well, we love caretaking. We love kind of like the output, the give, like the output of energy. And sometimes I know for me too, in the past, I've had trouble asking for help. And that's kind of like the opposite. It's the receiving. It's the other end of the energy spectrum. And so I think that, yeah, that's definitely really important, because we have the resources there, and most nurses love helping. So I think that, asking, and also, it sounds like you have a lot of awareness with tone and you feeling, maybe stressed in certain scenarios, and even saying that, hey, I'm feeling a little bit stressed and I would love for some help in this situation, or even just help me prioritize. I think just talking it out and reaching out already kind of, at least for me, it makes me feel a little bit better. And I think it's just realizing too that asking for help is also like a muscle, and building that muscle is by asking. I don't know, does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and it really helps to hear it, from someone else who's been there. And just to think about, all we can do with each situation is look at it, review it, learn from it, and try to do better next time. I mean, that's all we can really do.
Right. And I think also remembering that it is, continued care. And so we are only one person, and we can, sometimes one patient or their family might start occupying most of our time based on what's going on. And I know in the past, I've definitely felt, bad. There's some families who are like, "Ooh, I didn't spend as much time as I would have liked," but also not beating yourself up over that, and having the compassion for yourself too, and knowing that, what didn't get done will get picked up in the next shift. And I think, yeah, having really strong self-care practices for, and, when shifts are over. And for me, I like journaling, and that could be, writing a few things after work that you would want to improve on, but also writing a list of the things that went well, because most likely there are a ton of things that went well that you did with your patients, with your families, with your coworkers, that would be nice to kind of like clear out, and then also focus on the good before bedtime, because that's when, yeah, you want to make sure you're getting your restful sleep and kind of letting that stuff go.
Thanks, that's really helpful. And just popped into my head that I'm going to set a ritual, which I've thought of doing, but when I get home, a journal, just a few words, and just as soon as I walk in the door, just light a candle and have it next to that journal. So
Yeah,
as a way of kind of clearing the energy and knowing that I need to sit here and be present and do this so I can process and move ahead.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I think, and thank you for sharing, because I think as nurses, all of us can relate to having shifts like that. I think that's like one thing too, we all have had those tough days. When you were talking about this, I remembered this one tough shift I had when I was a newer nurse. It was just one of those days where everything kept going wrong. And then I cleared out a food tray from a patient's room and everything fell. And I was like, no, when you just have that moment where literally everything goes wrong, and like a plate broke, all this stuff, I was just like, okay, well, it happens. Take a deep breath, and, also slowing down. Sometimes I think when we get overwhelmed, it's like we want to speed up to get things done, but actually taking the deep breaths, being in the present moment and slowing down, doing one thing at a time actually makes us feel less overwhelmed than kind of like giving into that chaotic energy as well.
Thanks. Great advice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for asking and for being here. I definitely can relate to those shifts, so I'm sure we're not the only ones. I don't know, Claudia. Claudia, how about you? Do you have shifts like that you remember?
Yeah, there's, especially being a new nurse, because just everything was overwhelming.
So overwhelming.
Yeah, and yeah, you can get to a point where just like the littlest thing like can fall or something, and you're like, oh my God, it's like so much. Because yeah, so it's so important to just take little breaks and maybe step out, like you were saying, like step out to the bathroom or somewhere quiet and just take like 3 deep breaths. Like that can just really help so much, I think, in recentering yourself and just refocusing and knowing it's not the end of the world and you're still in this. But yeah, I liked what you said about slowing down, because we could rush around and start to try to do everything, but then it's probably not in the best way. Slowing down.
Yes, I agree. And I think that remembering even something as simple as taking a few deep breaths, it really goes a far, it really, it goes a long way. And I think that is self-care too, just taking a moment of stillness, a moment of breathing. I think, there tends to be a lot of frantic energy in the hospital, especially depending on what floor you're working on. And these current times, there's extra stress in the air. And so taking the time to slow down actually, I think, not speeds things up, but actually makes things more effective. So yeah, I think that's an important one. Yeah.
And Rebecca, yeah, I love that you're gonna have the journal by the candle by your door, so you can just unload everything that happened. If it's small, doesn't have to be any organized form, just like put it out there so it's off your mind. And I find journaling does help me like kind of complete some thoughts. I might think like, oh, I already figured it out, but it really just helps you write it out and makes it more concrete too, because you're putting it down on physical paper. So it's a great practice.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I love journaling myself. I do it every morning as soon as I wake up, and not even for a very, very long time, but having that in the morning first thing and writing out gratitudes. And I think that it's a really quick way to shift your mindset too, and to just shift your emotional state, and to know, like our thoughts, our feelings, and our brain is just kind of like going in that area where we put our attention. And so, how can we shift that for ourselves? And again, I think nurses are so caring and have so much energy and love to give, but often, we do forget to give it to ourselves, and we are often our harshest critic. And some of the things we say to ourselves, we would never say to anyone else. And so also just being aware of like the thoughts and the things that are kind of looping in your brain. And so just being aware of that and being able to kind of shift that a bit too. But I'm really a big advocate for post and pre-work kind of like rituals, and it doesn't have to be anything very complex or long or complicated. For me, I like getting to work early and just having a moment to sit in the car and kind of like be mindful, be present, set an intention for the hospital, like I'm here with love and kindness and doing the best I can. And, just things like that, put the good energy out. And then, after the shift too, maybe replaying a few things you'd like to change, but not getting stuck on those. And also noticing all of the good that you did, and all the, I think, sometimes we don't realize like the true ripple effect we have on people. And so just trusting that you showing up and you being kind and compassionate is going so far. People talk about their nurses and healthcare providers for years. And so I think that sometimes we don't realize the magnitude of our effect either.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the importance of like morning routines are so important to set the tone and mood for the day. I find sometimes just even, taking deep breaths and breathing into the chest area, like the heart area, just actually really expands your love for yourself and the world. I just feel really a lot more open, and thinking of things that you're grateful for and writing them in a journal, that just changes your mindset. I think those practices are really helpful for me, at least.
Yes, I agree. Same. Having a morning routine has been such a game changer for me, having a consistent one. I think, there were always certain things I did, kind of like make my bed from childhood, that actually now I just incorporate even more in my morning routine and have little mantras that I say while I'm doing it. And for me, and I think all nurses, all people, but especially nurses, I think we're also empathic and very intuitive, and part of why we're kind of in the field. And I think that having the morning routine also helps, for me, it helps me just understand my own energy first and really tap into my own, this is me, this is kind of my day. I'm setting myself up to be not distracted. I don't check my phone first thing in the morning, which is something I used to do. And that's been a world of difference too, because when you wake up, and right when you wake up and right before bed is when your subconscious and your brain is just the most susceptible to whatever you put in it. So if, you're checking your phone first thing in the morning, that kind of already sets your day off on a reactive mode, I would say, just kind of reacting to everything else that comes in, instead of you showing up in your energy and your best self and you giving out to the world in that way after you've already filled yourself up. So yeah, thanks for also adding the morning routine, because I think that that's so important.
Yeah, also checking in yoga teacher training and in Bali, we also didn't check our phones until we finished meditation and did our morning yoga practice. And I thought that was a wonderful practice, not to reach for the phone first. Well, I turn off my alarm if it's going off, but other than that, I try not to check emails and text messages, because then you really, if you do that, then you just start your day off with everyone else's needs and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But if you don't turn it off, of course, if there's emergencies you need to tend to, or you're waiting for a call, then do what you need to do. But if not, then yeah, just taking that time, special time in the morning for yourself and your own thoughts. And it's really beautiful time, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it doesn't have to be so long. Some people I know, they love their sleep, but really giving yourself that extra time in the morning, I think it pays off exactly for the whole day. It kind of just sets your intention, sets your path for where your day will go. And I think that, I can see the difference in myself coming from the other end, where I used to wake up, check my phone, check the news, check my email, check my messages, check the weather, every single thing I could check. And now I'm no phone until after my entire morning routine is done. Yeah, thank you. Is there any other questions from anyone out there?
No questions. I just want to say I love everything that is being spoken. And I'll definitely put it into practice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing and for being here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tasha, for being here with us and sharing all your tips and tricks for self-care routines. I want to thank you, and thank you for everyone that's here.
Thank you.
We're just going to take thank you so much. We're just going to take a couple minutes break before the next session. The next session, we're going to have Eugenia. She's in the room right now, but we'll just have a few minutes so we can stretch and use the restroom if you need. But she's going to be talking about plant-based immunity, and she's going to give us some quick and easy recipes that we can make. But thanks again, Tasha.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And if anyone also wants to reach out, I'm on Instagram at The Nurtured Nurse, and also website is thenurturednurse.co. And there are plenty of self-care tips there as well, or you can feel free to reach out if you have specific questions. I'm happy to answer or connect in that way too. But thank you, Claudia, and also to Janelle for organizing.
Thank you. I'll put it in the chat box as well, and we send daily emails, so we'll put your contact information as well.
Cool. Thank you.
And you're welcome to stick around if you'd like, or hop in the other sessions.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you,
Thank
Tasha.
you. So we'll just take a short break here.